Back in the 80s, Hollywood used to make action movies so violent they got banned in entire countries. A Wall Street trust fund kid blew his family's money on a film where a man gets fed into an industrial meat grinder. A director used an exploitation movie as his audition tape for Friday the 13th, and the guy from Kiss got cast as an Islamic terrorist in 1986. So there's this guy named James Glickenhaus. He came from a wealthy Wall Street family. His dad was a big player in finance, and in 1980, young James decided he wanted to make a movie. Not just any movie, though. He wanted to make one of the most depraved vigilante films ever put on screen. A Vietnam vet comes back to New York and his army buddy gets paralyzed by a gang, so he starts killing criminals in the most gruesome ways possible. Think Death Wish, but Death Wish at least pretended to have some restraint. The Exterminator had none. Glickenhaus had this whole justification for it. He said TV and film had been sanitizing violence for too long. He wanted to show what violence really looks like. Noble intention, I guess, except his lead actor Robert Ginty had all the charisma of a wooden plank, and the script was basically just an excuse to show increasingly nasty kills. There's a scene where a mob boss gets fed into a giant industrial meat grinder in detail. Critics were horrified, but the movie made $30 million. And here's the part that gets me. After this whole thing, after making one of the most controversial exploitation films of the decade, Glickenhaus just quit. Mid-90s, he walked away from Hollywood, went back to Wall Street, and became a fund manager at his father's firm. Rutger Hauer had just come off Blade Runner, one of the most iconic sci-fi performances ever. You'd think he'd have his pick of great roles after that. Instead, by the mid-80s, he's doing this B-movie called Wanted, based on some old Steve McQueen TV show from the 50s. Hauer plays a bounty hunter tracking down a terrorist. They cast the terrorist, and the guy they picked was Gene Simmons from Kiss. The guy with the longest tongue in rock history, playing an Islamic extremist named Malak al-Rahim, who blows up a movie theater showing Rambo. Critics had a field day. One wrote that Simmons seems to be trying to find a career after music, and this movie wasn't going to do it for him. Roger Ebert roasted him. Everyone figured Kiss was done, and Simmons was desperate. Kiss went on to make hundreds of millions of dollars. When the movie came out, critics mocked the whole premise. Middle Eastern terrorists attacking soft targets in America, coming to U.S. soil and hitting places like movie theaters. Reviewers thought it was ridiculous fear-mongering. Then September 11th happened. After 2001, people started digging this thing out of bargain bins. The movie that got laughed at in 1986 for being unrealistic had basically predicted domestic terrorism 15 years early. Trauma Studios never pretended to make art. They made garbage, and they knew it. But even by Trauma standards, Surf Nazis Must Die was something else. A gang of surfing neo-Nazis terrorized the California coast. Their leader is literally named Adolf. An elderly black woman's son gets killed by them, so she goes on a revenge spree. It's exactly as tasteless as it sounds. Roger Ebert went to see it at Cannes and walked out after 30 minutes. Said it was too much even for him, but he loved the title so much he gave it an award just for that. Best title among the exploitation films showing at the festival. The movie looked like it cost $12 to make. You could probably fund the whole production with whatever the actors spent on sunscreen. And yet somehow this thing scared British censors so badly they refused to give it a certificate. That meant it couldn't be legally sold or distributed in the U.K. Surf Nazis Must Die was effectively banned in Britain. The censor said it had exploitative violence, tasteless Nazi imagery, and no redeeming context. After the third Dirty Harry movie came out in 1976, Eastwood said he was done. No more Harry Callahan, the character was finished. Warner Brothers wasn't ready to let go. They licensed a series of novels to keep the franchise alive. 12 books with titles like Death on the Docks and Massacre at Russian River. Pulpy stuff to keep fans interested. Eventually, they convinced Eastwood to come back. The deal, reportedly, was that Warner would greenlight other projects he actually wanted to make if he'd do one more Dirty Harry. Sudden Impact was the only Dirty Harry movie that Eastwood directed himself. He cast his wife Sandra Locke, victim who's been hunting down and killing the men who assaulted her. Harry's supposed to catch her, but you can guess whose side the movie's really on. It's pretty sleazy, and the violence in the early scenes is genuinely hard to watch. There's a scene where a bad guy gets impaled on a carousel unicorn's horn, but the movie made a fortune and gave us the line everyone remembers, so there's that. Danny Steinman's career is one of the strangest in Hollywood. He started in the early 70s directing hardcore. Then he made a horror film called The Unseen and hated it so much he took his name off it entirely, used a fake name so nobody would know he made it. Savage Streets was supposed to be his comeback, and in a weird way it worked. The movie stars Linda Blair. You know her from The Exorcist, that innocent little girl possessed by a demon. By the 80s, Blair had been arrested for cocaine, posed for Playboy, and was doing exploitation schlock like this. She plays a teenager whose deaf-mute sister gets assaulted by some gang and whose pregnant best friend gets murdered. So she gets a crossbow and starts hunting the guys down. The stuff that happens before she snaps is almost unwatchable. The movie earns its brutality. For some reason, Savage Streets was huge in South America. It was one of the highest-grossing films in Mexico for the first half of 1985, beat Ghostbusters and Beverly Hills Cop. Producers saw how well it did and offered Steinman Friday the 13th Part 5. His big break, a real franchise. He took the job, made the movie, and then quit filmmaking forever. Just walked away and never directed again. Arnold Schwarzenegger made a lot of great movies in the 80s. Terminator, Conan, Predator, all classics. And then there's Commando, which is not a classic. It's deeply, profoundly stupid, and it's one of the most entertaining things he ever made. Arnold plays a retired Special Forces guy named John Matrix. His daughter gets kidnapped and he has to kill approximately 1,000 people to get her back. The violence in this movie is creative in ways you don't expect. Matrix doesn't just shoot people. He impales them with whatever's lying around. Table legs, steam pipes. If it's in the room and it's vaguely pointy, someone's dying on it. And the body count just keeps climbing until it becomes genuinely absurd. It's the rare action movie where everyone involved knew they were making junk food and decided to make the best junk food possible. No pretensions, no message, just Arnold having the time of his life mowing down an army. The first two Death Wish films at least pretended to care about morality. Charles Bronson's vigilante character was supposed to make you think about justice and revenge and where the line is. By Death Wish 3, everyone gave up pretending. Bronson's character has now had his entire family killed across multiple movies. At this point, he's just been doing freelance vigilantism across America for a year. That's the backstory. He's been wandering the country killing criminals for fun. The finale is something you have to see to believe. Bad guys just keep popping out of buildings, endless waves of them. Bronson and his buddies are mowing them down like a video game. There's no logic to how many criminals are in this neighborhood, they just keep spawning. And then to kill the main villain, Bronson pulls out a rocket launcher in a residential area. That's how Death Wish 3 ends. Chuck Norris said he made this movie to raise awareness about a real issue. He'd read an article in Reader's Digest about terrorists potentially infiltrating America through Miami. He wanted to make a statement, but the statement got a little lost. Norris plays a CIA agent who has to stop Soviet-backed Cuban terrorists from taking over Miami. The plot is pure Reagan-era paranoia turned up to 11. The villains are cartoonishly evil and the violence is constant and sadistic. In the big finale, Norris faces off against the main Soviet bad guy and kills him with a bazooka. Norris claimed he was making a thoughtful film about national security. What he actually made was an excuse to blow things up for 90 minutes. Nobody complained. Patrick Swayze had just come off Dirty Dancing. The romantic lead, the guy who made women swoon. Roadhouse fixed that. Swayze plays a bouncer, but not just any bouncer, he's a cooler. That's like an elite bouncer who gets hired to clean up problem bars. He's a legend in the bouncing community, the best in the business. The movie makes almost no sense. There's a corrupt local businessman, there's a love interest, there are endless bar fights. But here's the thing everyone remembers. Throughout the whole movie, people keep whispering about how Dalton once ripped a man's throat out with his bare hands. Just reached in and tore it out. You're watching and thinking there's no way they actually show that. This is a major studio movie with Patrick Swayze. No way they're gonna go for it. And they show it. In the finale, Swayze rips out the villain's throat with his bare hands on screen. The romantic lead from Dirty Dancing just tearing out a man's windpipe. They've remade this movie with Jake Gyllenhaal recently, but there's just no topping that.